Ladies and gentlemen, on this Red Gaming Zedicom video, let us discuss recent news that the Xbox One's driver update is indeed going to increase the speed of the system by about 10%. This news comes to us from Thuway, and he's hinted that the driver is going to be making a substantial difference. Now, if you want the links to this, including the original Twitter post and some of the mathematical formulas that I'm going to be using in this, then you can check the article out that I've linked below. But anyway, someone on Twitter, I'm going to hold his name back for privacy's sake, asked, do you think devs could make games like AC4 run in 1080p from 900p if they can get more performance from it? And Thuway responded, I can't say anything about that, but I've heard about 10% performance boosts should be on tap. So, what do I think? He obviously can't say it, maybe for privacy reasons, maybe he's not 100% sure. Well, I don't think it's going to make a difference in terms of 900p to 1080 in a lot of situations. So, for example, let's assume that a developer targets 30 frames per second and they try 1080p first, and let's assume that when they're doing that they average 25, 27 FPS, right? They might say to themselves, that's not quite enough, it's not quite as smooth as we'd like, you know, we're playing an action game at the end of the day. Alright, you know what, we're going to have to drop this down to 900p and we can easily maintain 30 FPS. On the other hand, a driver update comes along, and this, in which case, yeah, 10% is going to roughly make the difference up. 1080p, the frame rate's going to go up enough, so where, yeah, okay, it's probably going to be acceptable. But let's go the opposite way. Let's say that 900p is just about getting them 30, right? So the average is just about 30 FPS. Sometimes it's even dipping a little bit below that. That does not mean suddenly that extra 10% is going to mean that they're going to be able to render internally at 1080, because the gap between 900p and 1080p is substantial. Once again, if you want to go through the maths on all of this, you can, but I want to keep this video fairly on point. I've got the maths all on the article. So what this is most likely going to do is help with minimum and average frame rates, right? So in short, you're going to be seeing titles like Dead Rising 3 become slightly better in terms of a minimum and a stable frame rate, because that's the thing, right? A lot of the time people will just cite the max FPS. It's like, I could benchmark on my PC, and I use the word benchmark in a very loose term, by running at, let's say, 1080p, 2 times MSAA, and I could literally just go to an area where there's nothing around, just a pretty damn standard blank corridor, not many texture details, not much lighting to render, and I could pretty much just be walking along the wall, nose pressed up against it, and I could say, hey, look, the game's running at the high point of 84 frames per second. Let's just use that figure. That's not really helpful, right? Because the rest of the sections, when it goes to a more busy area, it might drop down to like a minimum of, let's say, 45 frames a second or 30 frames a second, and therefore the average and the minimum is really what you want to be looking at most of the time. With all of that said, some information is still missing. We don't really know what this driver update is going to entail in terms of, is it just, for example, for the GPU? Is it also going to be for the CPU, for the let's say the sound processor? Is it going to also help things such as developers getting more out of the ESRAM? Because we know right now, from what we understand, it's fairly complicated to utilize fully. So there's a lot of stuff that we simply just do not know. And in addition to that, we're not going to be seeing, 30 FPS to 60 FPS in titles as well. 10% is not going to make that difference, where the GPU has to literally do twice the amount of work for 60 as what it does for 30. And these are all things and factors that we need to take into account. Nevertheless, from the perspective of developers, it's likely going to be a substantial improvement. And I do wonder as well if this means that in the back end of the system, in the libraries, for example, and just the overall accessibility of the GPU, Perhaps that's improved a little bit as well. But once again, we just don't have that information yet. So, obviously, there are going to be things this is not going to help with. It's not going to increase the maximum performance of the GPU. For example, it's not going to mean it's going to go from like 1.32 teraflops of computing power all the way to like, well, just under 1.5. That's not going to happen. So, in actuality, it's going to remain pretty consistent. It's just that the software itself is going to improve in performance. This is very similar to, say, when you get a PC update for your graphics card. Let's say, for example, NVIDIA, when I used to play Tomb Raider, the original, Tress FX, and even the game generally, didn't used to perform that well on my graphics card. I mean, it wasn't bad, but you just thought to yourself, why is it, not running as well as it should? And it was quite simply because NVIDIA just didn't have time to optimize their drivers, right? A driver update came out, and my frame rate, I don't have the exact numbers on me, but it was substantial. It was like 20% boost, and you guys can Google that yourselves, look at the performance update from, say, a NVIDIA. You know what, I'm going to do it. Here, I've Googled it for you. For example, in Tomb Raider on Ultra setting 1080p, this is NVIDIA's drivers, when they went from the 3.14.22, they were getting 90 frames per second, but the previous drivers, the 314.7, they were getting only 60. So right there, that's an absolute ridiculous performance increase. And once again, I'm going to link this into the article as well, so you can check that out and just save you some time. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.